It's a good time for us to get into perhaps your biggest story in the land today. Well, it was a debate that preceded the present government, and some top officials in this present administration had said subsidy on petrol is a scam and it needs to be scrapped. But years down the line, it is still with us. Nigerian government pays subsidy on every drop of petrol consumed here on Nigerian soil, but there are fears that if the subsidy is removed, fuel price will go up, thereby leading to increased hardship on Nigerians. Those are some of the positions of many experts. Well, let me allow you to listen to a former head of state, Abdulsalami Abubakar, who at a lecture today warned about a possible removal of fuel subsidy. Take a listen to General Abdulsalami Abubakar, who gave a lecture today in Abuja.
The result is a continual rise in the prices of food items beyond the reach of many Nigerian families. On top of all these, Your Excellencies, fuel prices are expected to rise significantly in the coming months, as announced last November by the NNPC. We all know when this happens, as the government has planned, it will push many millions deeper into poverty.
Well, that is General Abdulsalami Abubakar warning about it and the possible implication of it. Now, the Senate President, Senator Hamid Lawan, visited President Buhari in the presidential villa a few days ago. And after the meeting, this is what the Senate President said. Take a listen.
Many citizens were so concerned, our constituents across the country are very concerned that the federal government will remove the petroleum subsidy. And for us as parliamentarians, as legislators representing the people of Nigeria, this must be of interest to us. And we've just finished our recess. We had gone home to our constituencies and senatorial districts, and we felt the pulse of our people. And I found it necessary to visit Mr. President as the leader of our government and our leader in the country to discuss this particular issue of concern to Nigerians. And I'm happy to inform Nigerians that Mr. President never told anyone that the petroleum subsidy should be removed.
You heard the Senate President. But if the government its position is this, because he just left the president office when he spoke to journalists, and that is a position. That's what he said came out of that meeting. But let me remind you of what the finance minister told us on China's television. In fact, the petroleum minister also gave similar position on the state of subsidy in Nigeria. Let me allow you to listen to the finance minister.
The Petroleum Industry Act, the PIA, that has been passed, actually has a provision that says petroleum products should be deregulated, which means there should be no subsidy of any petroleum product. So in making our plans, at least in the 2020 budget, we assume that this deregulation will take effect from the month of July 2022. And why? Because when the act was passed, the president said there will be a one-year time frame within which implementation will be made, moving from the status quo to the provisions of the PIA. So we assume that by June, we'll be able to exit fuel subsidy, and we have made provisions only up to June in the budget for fuel subsidy.
That was the finance minister sometimes last year around November, right here in this studio, when he said June. That is the date, don't forget, because the PIA has also a regime, has a timeline for it to kickstart. Well, it has even started because the board of NNPC and all of that are being constituted, and all of these things are also in place. So where do we go from here? The petroleum minister on Channels Television. I also said the same thing, similar to the position of the finance minister. Don't let me take you to that because it's somewhat the same position. Let me take you to what the governors are saying. The chairman of the Nigerian Governors Forum, Cardiff IME, earlier today, also gave a position on the issue of subsidy. I'll allow you to listen to what the governors' positions are.
The forum also discussed the issue around petroleum subsidy and concluded to engage the leadership of the Nigerian Labour Congress and the Trade Union Congress on how best to address this issue without causing any disaffection, but with a view to salvaging the Nigerian economy for the Nigerian people. For us at the forum, it is a matter that is a going concern. We don't have a definitive issue on it because it's left to the Petroleum Industries Act. You heard me earlier. It is not for us. NNPC is now a private company, and the company should decide what it wants to do with the price of its products. It shouldn't really be the business of governors, really.
That's the chairman of the Nigerian Governors Forum, Cardiff IME. But let's get down to it, everyone. What are the issues for this conversation, everyone? Should subsidy go? That's a big question, isn't it, on the issue over this matter? Well, another big question is if it is removed, what are the effects of its removal? If government says that it will go, when they say that it's June, their pressure mounting on government whether to keep it or not. Is the government in a fix? Okay, these are the issues. But what are the bottom line? The bottom line for us here on this matter is that, well, how do we deal with the elephant in the room, the burden of subsidy, to go or not? Let's get to it, everyone, shall we? I have joining me tonight the president of the Nigerian Labour Congress, Mr. Ayuba Waba. Thank you so much, comrade, for joining us tonight.
Well, thank you, sir, for having me.
Now we've come to it. A lot of us knew it from last year that this year will be a year that will see a lot of labor-related activities because there are a lot of issues that have lingered up until we crossed into 2022. The doctors' issues are there. The teachers, the nurses' issues, all of these issues are there. But on top of that is the average man issue, which is the issue of the fuel subsidy. Now, we know for sure that since the PIA regime came upon us, something drastic will happen. And it's a matter of time, isn't it, Mr. Waba, that subsidy will go. But the question is, when? Now, let's begin from the surface. Should subsidy go or not, Mr. Waba?
Well, first, let me start the conversation with what is actually referred to as subsidy or deregulation, which I think is a term that is like a carryover from the military, because this issue actually started from the military before we then came into democratic rule in 1999. Every government have used interchangeably these two words. But let me understand, let me try to shed more light on this issue. First is that we are an oil-producing country. And therefore, it entails that we have a comparative advantage when it comes to the issue of petroleum products. What we have failed to do is actually to try to utilize the opportunities that we have. And that is the refining of those products for domestic use. We have no reason whatsoever to actually depend 100% on the importation of refined products. This has been the argument.
I was going to say
let me also look at
I was going to say, Mr. Waba, oil-producing country without a petroleum refining facility.
Yes, let me come into the conversation because let us interrogate the issue properly. Because you remember that there was a time in this country, and it's not too long, I think 8 years down the line, when the crude oil was selling for a barrel is being sold at $100 per barrel. And you remember that time, the issue of subsidy also came in. And at that time, we were selling PMS at 17 naira per liter, between 65 and 17 naira per liter. And we are told that there is full deregulation. What we are now calling either subsidy or deregulation is actually the price we are paying for the continuous devaluation of our currency. Let us understand that clearly. Because if it's about the price of crude oil at international market, today the price of crude oil at international market is $88 per barrel. And when you compare from where we are coming from, where the PMS was then sold as between 16 naira per liter and 17 naira per liter, and they said it's because the price have gone up. And now we are at the same level. The price of crude oil is $88 per barrel, and yet we are talking of increasing the price. What is the reason? The reason is simple. Our currency have continued to be on a free fall, and therefore at every point, this issue will come up if we are not refining for domestic use. So it's a vicious cycle.
Who is to blame?
Certainly, government should be blamed. We have every reason not to import refined products. We have 4 refineries that are moribund. Those refineries, I knew they are not old, because today in India we have a refinery that is 100 years old. Refineries can be refurbished, refineries can be upgraded from one refining capacity to the another. This can be done. So those refineries are not old. Deliberately, they are made not to work. Just because there are a lot of incentives.
Who are these people that are making them not to work?
You know, those that are responsible in fixing those things. Those refineries ought to be working. But as we speak, a lot of resources have gone into its revitalization, and it's not working. Then people will come and tell us, you need to pay more, you need to import. We have no reason.
Could it be, I mean, this is just a question to you, because you've been in the system, so you will know better.
Yes.
Could it be those that are benefiting from the subsidy are the ones that are not making it work? You made reference to those who are not making it work, the refineries, that is.
It can be part of it, because it's like a chain. Many are actually benefiting from it. Those who are those importing, you may ask the question. And who are those determining the price, you can ask the question. And you know for sure that people are benefiting. If not, there is no reason, as I said. And this is issue that Labour have engaged for the past 20 years. We have engaged the issue. We have provided solutions of what can be done. So now understanding
what are some of the solutions, Mr. Wahab?
One solution clearly is about having a refining capacity. We must be able to refine product for domestic use, and that is what most OPEC countries are doing. We shouldn't rely 100% on importation of PMS and other petroleum products. One, we are exporting our jobs. Not only exporting jobs, we are also imposing more burden on many, many Nigerians. In fact, we can take over the entire West African market if we're able to refine product for domestic use. Secondly, we have also
apologies, just on that note,
yes,
those refineries that the government says is working to fix and is getting some partners to get them working, how good is that news to you, to your ears?
Well, basically, the news we have had is that we started with one, the Port Harcourt refinery, which I think, from the information, is that is going to be working possibly next year. And yet, we are not yet there. The 3 are still moribund. But also, if you remember, the issue of the refineries have been on for a very long time. Each government will come and say, I will fix it. And at the end of the day, it will not be fixed. For the same reason we have mentioned. Take the issue of modular refineries. In fact, modular refineries can actually address the perennial issue of shortage of gas, diesel, and also bring down the price. But you can see that the price of diesel have also continued to go up. That's why the price of food items or food or agri products will not come down, because transportation is really high. As of today, I was discussing with the transport sector, and they said diesel is almost going for between 314 naira per liter to 260 naira, depending on where you are buying. And therefore, it will make transportation so expensive. And therefore, cost of goods and services that will also depend on transportation, those costs will be built into it. So those are the issues. Those are the challenges.
Let me ask you, because there's a confusion. How much of petrol do we consume in this country?
Well,
do we know?
That is also part of the confusion. And that is why we have said that the inefficiency that is in the system should not actually be transferred to consumers to continue to go. That is a question. At a time, DPR informed us, And Nigerians can actually track that to say we are consuming about 38 million liters per day. And suddenly I think NNPC come up and say, well, we are consuming about 102 million liters per day. And they said this is because a lot of the products are being smuggled across the borders. And we made just a simple calculation. If you are to look at the gap between 38 million liters and 102 liters, it means that on daily basis, 200 trucks will be smuggling products across the country. And this is an issue we have interrogated in the past. We have given also recommendation. The best, first we said, can you build refineries around those borders so that we can also take comparative advantage of all the neighboring countries and we'll be selling. And that was agreed, but to date, nothing has happened. So basically, you see, if you look at the issue clearly, there is no transparency. And therefore, the issue of even how much we consume per day is still a mystery. Right. And this is not rocket science. It's something that can be found out and something that we can work on. Because as I said, the issue of subsidizing for the people is not certainly an idea that is bad. As we speak, 58 countries around the world are still subsidizing energy, including the United States. So it's not a bad idea, but it's to look at empirical data. Is it actually true that we are consuming even this amount of PMS and other products that we mentioned? The obvious fact that it is not transparent and nobody can say it's true.
Pre-2012, when we had the fuel subsidy protests in Lagos and it was a very major one for the government of the day at the time, this question has been asked, how much do we consume? Before I get into, because we've laid a premise, but what we have seen that has happened is it looks so much that the government seems to have changed their position quickly in the last few months. In the last few months, the government has said, subsidy we go. Few days ago, they say, it may not go. What do you make of that discordant tune?
Well, simple. Any leader that will feel the pulse of the people at this point in time will know the implication of price hike. I don't want to go into this issue of whether subsidy or the regulation is price hike. We should come out clearly to say that the impact of the regulation or what we call subsidy, the impact of it is that there will be price hike. And already figures have been mentioned. So the implication is that ordinary Nigerians are already imagining if the price goes up from the current price of 163 to 165, what will be the implication? It's spiral inflation. That has been the major reason.
And it might affect food prices?
Everything will be,
almost all
yes,
commodities.
And it will impact on all Nigerians, except
but government said that they have some strategy to cushion the effect.
It's better said than done. Let me tell you what happened in 2016. In 2016, when this issue also was discussed, you remember that is what brought about the issue of the minimum wage. We also discussed the issue of compressed natural gas to actually drive, we convert vehicles, so that we'll then reduce the number of vehicles that will even be using PMS. As I speak, many countries have adopted this policy. One of them is Cote d'Ivoire. Cote d'Ivoire, as we speak, they have 10,000 vehicles that have been converted and they're using compressed natural gas. You know that in the whole world, Nigeria has the highest, one of the highest reserves of natural gas in the world. I think only second to Russia. The second one is, even within the context of Africa, Egypt has 38,000 vehicles converted to use natural gas. I remember at that conversation, about 260 billion was actually committed to the issue of conversion of vehicles, particularly the ones that use diesel and even some petroleum products, to drive that process and then come back and give us...
billions are spent, but nothing is
on the table. And so, that's why everybody is concerned, and particularly organized labor, we are concerned that promises have been made, and we have documentation, we have reports, but none of those promises have been kept. And we are now at the same cycle. So it's a vicious cycle.
A critical question here, Mr. Waba. Do you feel that what we are seeing within the government circle, the discordant tune that we're hearing and saying now, it does look like there's a flip-flop? Well, now, the question is, could it be the pressure of the fear of the effect of removal of subsidy that is making some persons in government to be flip-flopping?
First, it's about the policy. I can say emphatically, and we have documented that they are agents of the neoliberal forces that are actually pushing some of those policies, so that we'll continue to import. We shouldn't think inward to think of refining products, and therefore they will be the major beneficiaries. This is one theory, and therefore they will continue to push this idea. How did this conversation start? It started with the World Bank and IMF. They were the first people to make the conversation about whether there is subsidy, whether there is removal. And I remember World Bank said, well, if the people accept. And subsequently now you have played the clip of how the Minister of Finance came in to say, well, we are going to remove subsidy. Even the PIA you mentioned, our position was very clear at the public hearing. All organized labor, our position was very clear. What needs to be done? You need to actually strengthen refining capacity. So the third angle of it, which I think is very critical, is for us to know the impact of this policy, which is what I think many Nigerians, and including those that have spoken, including the Senate President. Senate President is a leader. He is connected with his constituency. He has gone to actually feel their pulse and the implication of the policy, because there is a policy pronouncement that was made. And I can tell you that before that policy pronouncement was made, Labour was not consulted. You remember when the price was increased in September 2000, they increased it with about 10 naira, we responded to say in the mix of COVID-19, when other countries are actually giving palliative, they are coming to increase the price of this important commodity. It will have an impact, and therefore it was suspended. We also started discussion of what needs to be done. Labour committee position. The meeting ended sine die, and since then nobody was consulted.
So let's sort of summarize the conversation and give a headway, because you're an authority and Nigerians are watching. Millions of them, they are waiting. Your members, the average Nigerian, that are on the street wondering what exactly will happen after this, and perhaps they're also wanting you to make some policy statement tonight, Mr. Waba. First and foremost, it is a matter of when. It's not a matter of if. Because there is a law effective now, the PIA, that stipulates that with all of the regime of the subsidy and all of that, it can no longer be provided for. The NNPC is a private entity as it is. Government has interest in it. Now, June is the timeline for it. Are we ready for it?
Well,
for the removal?
Every law and every policy must be for the good of the people. If any policy is going to impose hardship on the people, people should resist it, and they have a right to resist it. When that policy pronouncement was made, organized labor met, and we issued a statement rejecting that policy. To say if the policy is about continue to import, and then in the name of subsidy removal, hike the price, which will then make life unbearable for average Nigerians, particularly those in the majority. Because I tell you that 90% of Nigerians will be impacted with this policy.
But the debate is that the percentage of those who benefit directly from the subsidy on fuel is not even more not even up to 55%.
That is not correct. That is people that are not actually connected with the people. That has no empirical basis.
Those who use vehicle,
and let me give you example.
Let
me give you example. It's not only those that use vehicle. If you are a tailor, you use a small generator, I pass my neighbor, you will be impacted. If you ride keke napep, that you carry people, and in all our cities, there is no city that would have less than 1 million keke napep. You can find out. They are our members, we know. They will be impacted. If you ride motorcycle, you will be impacted. If you have a car, you will even be doubly impacted. The implication of all of this is that it will have a chain of effect, and everybody will be impacted. That's the reality. And that has been the issue over time. This has been well documented. So the idea of saying either 40 million people or 10 million people will be impacted, that is not correct. There is no empirical basis to actually point at this. And those are issues that we can argue.
All right.
Issues also we can defend.
The government has said that they're putting in place palliatives. They are putting in place about the transport subsidy to about 40 million vulnerable Nigerians. That is a reason enough to placate anybody for government's decision to remove subsidy. Is that not enough?
Well, basically, I think that certainly is not something that we have discussed, but basically it also will not address the impact of this policy, which I've enumerated earlier. It goes beyond few incentive. It's like robbing Peter to pay Peter, not even robbing Paul to pay Paul. You are being robbed, maybe give him 5,000, and the same 5,000 is used to pay you back. That will not work. It's better we fix the system. It's better for us to address this issue and get a permanent solution to it.
So you are rejecting any of the palliatives?
Well, basically, I think it's not about a matter of palliative in this case. So it's about looking at the policy and trying to think through and see what best can address this problem once and for all.
I assume the president is watching and members of cabinet are watching right now.
Yes.
Well, you're telling them that for June, dates set for the removal, they should not do it.
Well, at the negotiation table, we have agreed what needs to be done. First is, if the issue of the regulation or subsidy removal is based on the issue of importation, Labour said we are not be part of that conversation, because we cannot actually have a policy that is based on importation.
So
on
fix refinery first.
Yes, first.
Let us refine
Yes,
locally
let us
before
see,
you remove.
Yes, let us see
that
what
will
you are
not
doing.
happen
Yes.
this year. It may only happen next year.
That's
practically. Maybe
the
we have one refinery that will work, but Dangote refinery open to commence work. That's not government refinery. But now the question is that should government remove subsidy from petrol in June? What would Labour do? Well,
Labour have already indicated our line of action. First, we rejected this whole policy of continue to import product for domestic use, and now trying to look at how the system is not working and transfer the entire issue to Nigerians. And we have said clearly that there are many options. What we will do first is, already you are aware, Labour have set 27th of January to make sure that we're able to inform Nigerians. And I'm sure Nigerians are also joining to say that this policy certainly has a lot of implication and is going to push many people into poverty. And basically, these are options we are bringing to the table. If that fails, and they said, well, we are continuing to drive the process and also remove the subsidy, the so-called subsidy. I want you to put the word subsidy in court. Then basically also you know what it entails. We have no any other option than also to resist the policy, and basically we have done that time without number.
And you shut the country down.
It's not about shutting the country.
No. When Labour resists, it's tantamount to shutting the country down.
Some of those policies.
You go to the street, then you withdraw your work.
And you have seen that around the world. This is not happening here only. The issue why many Nigerians feel that we ought not to be in this situation is because we have oil. God has given us oil freely. What has happened to us that we cannot even refine it? Take, for instance, the diesel I said. Modular refineries can be built in 12 months, 18 months. Why can't we do that? The so-called subsidy money you are talking about, if we interrogate it carefully, I'm sure that it will not be what they are quoting, 260 billion per month, because of the incoherent figures that are actually before the public. Those are the issues. So basically, it's about life and death for us, those on fixed wages. In 2016, they promised a minimum wage will be implemented. Everybody will be paid. As I speak to you, 6 states have not even started. It's part of the agreement. So when you say we'll now agree about the palliative, in 2016, we also discussed palliative. 500 billion was earmarked for palliative, including housing, including the issue of transportation, to make sure that these things are not in place. And therefore, it goes beyond promise. It's about now looking at the issue. And importantly, that the whole world is now in a very precarious situation. Many workers have lost their job. Those on fixed wages, their salary cannot take them home. That's the reality.
Mr. Waba.
So in this complex issue, if we compound it with the price hike of PMS, it then means that many people will go to their graves early. So it's better we then try to also resist the issue and make sure that people are safe.
Mr. Ayuba Waba, the president of the Nigerian Labour Congress, thank you so much for coming tonight. We've heard a lot of the government side to this, and we're hoping that we will get their reaction to the position you have given tonight on the program. Thank you so much, Mr. Waba, for coming.
Well, thank you very much for having me. I think we'll do the needful to try to make sure that we also don't put all of us, many Nigerians, into jeopardy. I think it's high time we look at the issue and address it.
All right. Thank you so much. That's some kind of engagement with government. That's what you are talking about.
Well, basically, I've told you that the engagement ended sine die because it goes beyond one arm of government. It's something that needs to be driven holistically. Because all the tiers have responsibility. It's not that, I remember that the platform we had, everybody was there. So basically, it's about doing the right thing at the right time. We don't wait until...
maybe the sincerity of government.
And the sincerity of purpose.